Hello class, it's Mr. Kablan here again. And what we're going to do in this short lesson for today is we're going just to look at properties of slopes and lines. And the main thing that we're going to focus on is that we'll be able to take a look at an equation itself and determine just different things about it in terms of how steep it is and how steep it is compared to other lines and things like that. Okay, so that's just basically what we're going to talk about in this lesson. So a couple of things that we're also going just to quickly revisit again is the calculation of slope using rise over run, and just a couple of things that we're just going to just review as well. So remember that any line that's going up from left to right is going to be a positive slope, and any line that is falling or going down from left to right is a negative slope. So we spent a lot of time on that in the last two lessons here, and so we're just going to review that quickly. Now, what's important here is that any line that's going from left to right, okay, a horizontal line, all horizontal lines or all lines that go from left to right will always have a slope of 0, okay? So that's just something that you just need to know when it comes to lines that are going from left to right there, okay? Just straight lines going across. Now, what we're going to look at in just brief detail here is our parallel lines. Now, remember, parallel lines from back in grade 9 are lines that never meet. Now, when you have two equations, what we're going to see is that when you look at two equations, we'll be able to figure out whether two lines are parallel or not. And all you have to know about parallel lines, and you again, you just probably want to put a star beside this one, is the fact that any lines that are parallel are always going to have the same slope. Okay, so remember when we're looking at the slope here, we're just going to look at the m values to see if they're the same or not. That's pretty much it. Okay, so that's dealing with parallel lines. And we're also going to see how we can figure out which line is steeper when we're comparing two equations. And all we're going to do again is to take a look at the slope and then which one there has a number that is further away from 0. Okay. All right. So let's just do a quick review of positive and negative slopes. So if you take a look at part A over here, what we have here is a ramp that's going up to the right. So what we have here is a positive slope. So using rise over run, remember the rise is the number of units going up and down. Okay, notice in this case here, we don't have to count, so we're just using the numbers that we have there. So the rise here will be 50, okay, and the run here will be the 100 there. Okay, so what we have there will be a slope of 50 over 100. And if you go 50, fraction key 100, that's going to give us 1 over 2 there. All right. Now for part B, the only difference with this one here is the fact that what we have here is a negative slope because we have a line that's falling down to the right. So using rise over run, what we have here will be a rise of 32 and a run of 48 with a negative in front. Okay, and when we take a look at that, negative 32 over 48, that's going to reduce to negative 2 over 3. All right, so that's just a quick recap on how to figure out slopes of lines when you have rise over run. All right, so for the next example here, we're going to look at parallel lines. Okay, now remember parallel lines are two lines that never meet. And the part that you have to remember about this one here is that when we're dealing with parallel lines, just remember that parallel lines will always have the same slope, okay? So it says write the equation of the line that is parallel to each line. So you notice that we have two sets of lines where one line you are given the equation and the other one you are not. So remember that all equations of lines are in the form of y equals mx plus b, as you can see in these two examples here. So for the first one, for the line on the left side here, we're going to always start off by looking at y equals mx plus b. Now, the part that you have to remember, as I said before, that the slopes of parallel lines are exactly the same. So if you look at the given line here, y equals 3x minus 2, remember the slope is the value for the m, which in this case here is the 3. So that means the equation of the other line will have that same m value, which is 3. Okay, so that's our first step. So that means we just need to find the y-intercept what the y-intercept is. And you can see that the line, okay, touches the y-axis here at 1. So the equation of that line will be y equals 3x plus 1. That's it. Okay, same thing with the other line here. So if you take a look at the two lines here, you notice that they're both falling down on the right. Okay, and the equation that's given to you is y equals negative 2x plus 3. So starting off by writing down y equals mx plus b. Okay, remember that the slopes of parallel lines are always the same. So if you look at the equation y equals negative 2x plus 3, okay, the slope again is the m value, or the number attached to the x. So the m value here is the negative 2. So the slope of the other line, okay, is also going to be negative 2. And last but not least here, we're just going to see where this line touches the y-axis here. So if you look at that, the line in the bottom, you notice it touches the y-axis here at negative 4. So we're going to replace the b here with the negative 4, like so. And don't forget, anytime you have two signs that are side by side, in this case we have a positive and a negative together, that changes the net to a negative. So the equation of that line, that's going to be y equals negative 2x minus 4. So bottom line for this example here, I just want you to see that when you're looking at equations of parallel lines, okay, notice that the slope or the m value is always the same. The only thing that's different is the y-intercept or the b value. All right, last but not least here, we're now going to look at equations, and we're going to figure out which lines here are steeper. So it says here, for each pair of equations, determine which equation represents a steeper slope and provide an explanation. Okay, now the key thing that I want you to see here, and then write this part down, is that ignoring the sign that's attached to the number in that's attached to the x, okay, the greater the coefficient of x, or the higher the number is away from 0, the steeper the line is. Okay, so if you take a look at the first example here, notice that what we have here is y equals 2x plus 7 for the first example, and then y equals 5x minus 3. So if you look at the m values, you notice for the first equation, we have an m value of 2. Okay, and for the second equation, we have an m value here of 5. So you have to ask yourself, between those two numbers, okay, which number has a greater coefficient, or a number that is further away from 0. So if you look at 2 and 5, okay, notice again, the best way to look at this, another way to look at this, which number is bigger. Okay, in this case, you notice it's going to be the 5. So since 5 is bigger than 2, or 5 is further away from 0 than 2, okay, this equation here will be the one that has a steeper line. Okay, so slope of 5 is steeper because it's, the number 5 is further away from 0. All right, for this next one over here, if you take a look at the first equation, we have y equals negative 3x plus 2, and the other one here is y equals x minus 1. Now, before we figure this out here, one little gap that we have to fill in is that anytime you see a letter x and there's no number in front, there's actually a number that's hiding in front there, which in this case here is 1. Okay, so what we really have in front of that x there is an invisible 1, which tells you that the slope of that particular line there is 1. So just to compare the two slopes over here, okay, notice that what we have here is a slope of 1, so this would be the m value. Okay, you can just write it there if you want. Okay, and in this case here we have negative 3. Now, if you take a look at what I've written above here, it says ignoring the sign of the coefficient of x, the greater the coefficient of x, the steeper the line. So if you take a look at the negative 3, just ignore the negative for a moment and just focus on the 1 and the 3. So since 3, okay, is further away from 0, okay, in that case, even though this is a negative number, okay, this particular equation will have a steeper slope. Okay, and the reason for that is because negative 3 itself is further away from 0. Okay, so a couple of ways you can look at that. Okay, the main thing here is that when you're looking at the slope, ignore the sign and see which number is further away from 0. All right, last but not least over here, and then this question over here also goes back to this. Okay, it says here, ignoring the sign of the coefficient of x, the greater the coefficient of x, the steeper the line. So if you take a look at these ones, okay, notice we have the negative 8 over here and an 8. Now, key thing I want you to see here is ignoring the signs. If you ignore the signs for these ones, okay, notice if we ignore the signs, what we have here is an 8, okay, and guess what? What we also have here is an 8. So you notice that both of these lines over here have the same slope. Okay, again, we have an 8 over here and another 8. The only difference with the first equation, there happens to be a negative in there. So by ignoring the signs, you notice that you have the exact same slope. Okay, so in this case, the explanation here is neither. And the reason for that is because 8 and negative 8 have the same distance from 0. So they have the same steepness. The only difference here is the direction. Okay, so the part I want you to see here again is the fact that again, they have the exact same steepness, just opposite in direction. Okay, and when it comes to the number themselves, okay, don't forget what you have here is that -8 and 8, okay, have the same distance from 0. All right, so that wraps up this lesson. So continue on working on your workbook. If you have the textbook handy, you can work on this question as well. And I will see you in the next lesson.